another week. So being here, today's presentation will be by Jornada Rias from Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais in Brazil. And then she'll be talking about antiviral modulatory responses against SARS-CoV-2. So I'll give a little 10-minute update first on COVID news and papers that have come out that you might not seen, and then and some of the trends and the COVID's trending in different countries, and then we'll have her speak about her work. Show this every week, but I'll skip it now. And there hasn't been any new papers yet. Hopefully this preprint here will be accepted anytime soon on the mitochondrial work we did. We're just waiting to hear back. Just an update, as I said, the long COVID subgroup should hopefully start soon. I haven't started it yet, but I think if we start generating data, that's probably when we should start it. And then Al's, for people who are interested to help him out in these case reports, he sent out an email and a calendar invite for a meeting and to discuss these interesting long COVID case reports that he had emailed the group about for people who want to help him write that paper. So if you didn't get the calendar invite from him and you were interested, email Al or me, and then we'll get you involved. Okay, let's dive into it. So just still free tests are available if you haven't taken advantage of that in the US, so let's keep it up here just in case. So one thing, a couple of interesting papers that come out to discuss immunity. I mean, one thing this article in BBC talks about in Japan, when we saw that huge spike go up and it's starting to come down and the deaths going up, this BBC article is talking about the low immunity in the elderly population might be the case why it's fueling a lot of the deaths in the aging population in Japan due to the COVID-19. But there's this nice little science article that came out. I mean, it's not a paper; it's just one of the news articles in Science that's discussing because I hadn't really, one fact about you've probably seen these news articles talking about the Merck drug this past week, and I didn't. There was probably earlier some concerns from scientists in the community talking about how Molnupiravir, for some reason I can't pronounce it today, but that drug early on, based on its targeting, because it's what it's doing, as this preprint talks about, it's actually targeting specific parts of the DNA and changing it so then the SARS-CoV-2 doesn't have any impact on the host. But there was concern doing this can actually maybe cause to further mutations, and now this preprint that has come out and this other Lancet article that came out this week starts talking about potential, I guess you could say, consequences of doing this, and maybe leading to potential ways that the virus might mutate. Now, they're not saying that this might make the virus mutate and become more virulent or transmittable, but the possibility could be there with further, I guess, evidence to show that. And then of course Merck said there's no evidence of this, and this is just a preprint, as I'm sure they would. Whether who's true and who's not, I mean, it's a preprint, but this is a pretty convincing article talking about this. And the science little news article kind of does a nice summary of these two papers and talks about this paper here in Lancet. Basically says the effectiveness of this drug by Merck has limited benefits. This one here actually talks about how this mutations can lead to further driving more mutations and more new variants that pop up in SARS-CoV-2. So that was interesting. People want to read about that. It's here. Again, it's a preprint, so as we know about preprints, take them with a grain of salt until it's peer-reviewed, but take a look. One interesting thing also about you probably earlier last year and the previous years are talking about the white deer population, how COVID was being transmitted between them, or SARS-CoV-2 was being transmitted. And this new paper that just came out in PNAS this past week actually talks about how in the white-tailed deer population in the U.S., and this is mainly in the New York area, as you can see, they did this study, is that the white deer population is stuck with the Delta population. This is a figure from the paper. So they haven't actually ever gotten to the human variants as we progress to Omicron and so on. They're still in this phase of season 2 with Delta. So that's interesting to read, and why that might be, they speculate, but it's a nice paper discussing that and characterizing that. And then this one related with the immune system too. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead, go ahead.
Kevin, if I could just interrupt real quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Did that PMS paper have any discussions about impacts on predators?
No, they don't talk about that. No, they're more talking about the human interaction with the deers, and why that might
Right,
be. Maybe there's less, or maybe the virus Omicron didn't go with that, but no predators. No, that's an interesting
right.
topic to look into. Yeah,
Yeah, because it's another vector pool to, you know,
yeah,
perhaps transmit the disease. So anyway, thank you.
yeah. No, yeah, yeah. I don't think I've ever seen any papers on that, but I haven't looked either. So be interesting to see. So, keeping with the theme of immunity, I just did a little side tour with this white-tailed deer population study. But there's actually some recent studies because people have been talking about what if you got the bivalent booster and the vaccine, and then you also got infected with COVID. How long does your immunity last? Some people are saying it's only a couple of months. Some people say a little longer. And this is like a nice first, this article here in Slate actually did a really nice job summarizing what is known, how does COVID impact the immune system, just in case, I'm sure everyone here is aware of it, but if you wanted to forward a nice news article describing it and why getting repeated infections is not necessarily a good thing, as we all know, as some people might think, I might have had a mild case of it, COVID, but getting infected again, what's the big deal? I guess that's the kind of narrative that some people have. But, and this is a nice article talking about even if you have mild, it goes, references a lot of literature out there in the publication field and in the science field, talking about how even mild cases like would keep overall damaging your immune system overall, and then they use this term immunity theft and so on. But going on from that, there's this nice these two papers come on. This Nature news article summarizes these two papers, talks about how well, how fast that now that we know with Omicron and your vaccination, how fast does your immunity fade? So they looked at this one paper that just came out this yesterday or 2 days ago, or no, it came out earlier. Sorry, January 5th, earlier this month, and then this paper came out in January too. But these two papers are talking about that if you had been infected with BA.5, of course they didn't have the XBB data points, but if you were infected with BA.5 and you had your bivalent booster, your immunity could pretty much last to 6 to 8 months. 8 months they were saying, but you could say maybe 6 months starts waning. And this is another paper that's showing the kind of similar thing, Omicron with the hybrid immunity being vaccinated. And this is a figure off that. This is just any infection, but this is with the vaccine, and then you're infected. You can see how long this lasts compared to if you didn't have the vaccine. But this was interesting to see that there's actually maybe a number for how long your immunity lasts if you had been vaccinated and then infected with the Omicron. BA.5 was the latest one they looked at here, which but they don't talk about biology again. They're just talking about how long your immunity will last. There's not much recent long COVID news, unfortunately, again, but there's this one article here talking about a study showing that with long COVID in young people, patterns of it show, that they've been impacted with their learning, as might not be a surprise. But there's this interesting preprint that just came out. Again, it's a preprint, so take it with a grain of salt, but they're talking about how long COVID can disrupt this blood-brain barrier, and that's maybe one reason you get brain fog and so on and so on. About the cognitive issues that you get. And there's some figures from there, like they look at images they've taken from the brain, and then they correlate it with different markers that they have of activity, and then they also look at some markers like TGF beta expression. Being the figures aren't here, but they looked at TGF beta, for example, as a marker of the damage to the blood-brain barrier and how it might impact cognitive ability. There's some other markers they looked at, and I don't remember now. You have to look at the paper, but TGF beta is one of them, which we know is. And then they also looked at pro-inflammatory markers too. So there was a bunch of a few inflammatory markers they looked at. So maybe the inflammation group might want to take a look at this preprint because there might be some, I think, overlap with what they're saying. But it doesn't cover what for long COVID, but it can have implications for the discussion part for our paper. But it's a preprint, so I don't know if you want to reference it. We'll just take a look. Okay, so that's not much recent long COVID news or other news that I was talking about, but this quick overview of the news. Just talking about the variants spread is XBB.1.5 in the U.S. This is the wastewater. just having this decline still in most places. I mean, starting to seem to a little maybe plateau, but will hopefully keeps declining. And as you see, the XBB, is the one, the purple color is the one that's gaining in the wastewater, even though the decline's happening. You can see this also in the COVID CDC COVID tracker. Here, XBB is up. This is the nowcast forecast. This is what the actual numbers were. The algorithm, as I mentioned, they made a new view of it where they separate what's the actual predictions they make based on their algorithm and what was the actual numbers. But their nowcast forecast has been very accurate throughout these past couple of years. But then you can see also, the distribution. Of course, we knew the Northeast had majority of the XBB started there and then spreading across the U.S. Globally, it's the same trend. This you can't really see much, but here you can, when you break it up by, Europe, Japan, South America, so on and so on, you can see the trends everywhere is kind of going down. So that's good. Breaking down just one country in Europe, France, you can see it's pretty much they had their peak where everyone else did, like after the holidays, and now it's going down. UK has put this up because, as we know, they've stopped reporting stuff, so it's not very accurate. People have more accurate ways of getting these numbers, let me know. US, we already went over. South America and Brazil, as I always say, South America follows Brazil's trend pretty well, so that's why I show both of those and not the rest of the countries. But the decline is there. There's not much data for hospitalization or patients, but the new deaths have been low too, so that's good. And Japan had their big peak, and then if you remember that BBC article, they're saying that the deaths, because of the low immunity, luckily they're coming down, but you can see how big their peak was. It's the largest deaths they've had since ever, for COVID at the beginning. So this last phase of Omicron, due to what they've speculated being low immunity, it could be because of that. That's it. So I don't know if people have any quick questions. So I want to give time for Jordana, enough time for her talk.